By now, you should have already had a chance to respond to the discussion post asking about which ladder she should choose after doing a little calculating using the Pythagorean theorem. Before you go on to take the test, I want you to go back and review your work and review your discussion post to make sure you fully understand this problem and know how to score a 30 out of 30 for the apply portion of your test. So the first part of the question asked for you to find the hypotenuse of the right triangle that was created in her backyard. All right, so the labeled triangle was given to you, and the numbers that you were given were the lengths of the legs. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick one of those leg lengths to represent A, or to plug in for A. I'll have A be 150. And then I'm going to pick the other leg length, and I'm going to substitute that in for B. And these are both in centimeters. So now I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the value of C, or the length of the hypotenuse. And in this case, it's going to be the length that the ladder needs to be in order to reach the windows. So if I plug in these values, 150 for A and 350 for B, using Pythagorean theorem, I'm going to have the formula 150 squared plus 350 squared equals C squared. So I need to follow order of operations, and I know that I need to simplify the exponents. 150 squared is the same thing as 150 times 150. And using my calculator, I got 22,500. And then 350 to the second power, or 350 times 350, is 122,500. And the sum of those two numbers should equal C squared. So now I need to add the two numbers together. 122,500 plus 22,500 is 145,000. So when I get to this step in the formula, and I'm left with C squared is equal to 145,000. Remember, when you're solving an equation, you're trying to isolate the variable or get the C by itself. So the only way that I can undo or use the inverse operation of squaring a number is to take the square root. So if I take the square root of both sides of my equation, the squared part that's with the C will cancel out. And so now I'm left with the square root of 145,000 is equal to C. Now, since we're talking about a real life situation here, it wouldn't make sense to have a negative number as an answer. So we're only going to take the positive square root. So I'm going to use my calculator, and I'm going to find the square root of 145,000. It's an irrational number, and it goes on forever. So I'm going to round it to the nearest hundredths place, which is 2 numbers past the decimal. So my whole number is 380, and 2 decimal places, I'm going to round 7, and then the 8's going to round up to a 9. So I would probably go back if this was the test, and I would check my work to make sure I squared those numbers correctly. And I also didn't make a mistake when typing the numbers into my calculator for square root. And I also should use the approximation symbol instead of the equal sign, because this is an approximate answer. So the approximate length of that hypotenuse is 380.79 centimeters. So the next part of the question asks to decide if option A or option B is the better ladder to purchase. Now, I'm going to remind you what we just got on the previous question. We got the length of the hypotenuse was about 380.79 centimeters. So we have 2 options. Option A is a ladder that has a height of 365, and option B is a ladder that has a height of 427 centimeters. Now, option B is a lot more expensive, but we need a ladder that's going to go all the way to the window. Otherwise, someone's going to get severely injured and it won't reach the windows to clean the tops of them. So if you notice, we need our ladder to be greater than or equal to 380.79. And ladder A is not. So I'm going to cross out ladder A because that ladder is not going to be long enough to reach the windows. So that means I need to go ahead and go with option B for the ladder, which is 427 centimeters. Now it's going to be a little bit too long, but if you think about this in real life, wouldn't you rather have a ladder that's a little bit too tall rather than one that's too short where you would not be able to reach? So the last part of the apply asks you to use the space to tell Mrs. Higuchi which ladder she should buy. Be sure to justify your thinking with a mathematical and written explanation or justification. So this is where I want to actually type out a paragraph. In your discussion post, you were asked to, I believe, write 3 to 5 sentences. So we're going to follow that direction while we type our response here. And you want to make sure that you use complete sentences. So we decided, so I'm going to go ahead and start my sentence and say, I believe the best option for Mrs. Higuchi is to purchase option B, which was the ox gourd ladder that was 427 centimeters and $400. Now, when you're submitting your work for the apply section of the test, not only do you want to include the written explanation, but you want to include the work that goes with it as well. So I will make sure I provide, if you have access to a printer, you'll be able to print out a page that has space for you to both show your work, show your calculations, and write out your explanation. And if you don't have access to a printer, you can just write it down on a plain sheet of paper or notebook paper. Okay, so right now I have answered the question, but I haven't justified my thinking with a mathematical or a written explanation. So now I'm going to go back and explain the work that I did. So I want to make sure I say that when using the Pythagorean theorem, I replaced the A and B in the formula with the values given for the legs of the right triangle. For instance, I plugged in 150 for A and 350 for B, since those were the lengths of the legs in the right triangle given. When I solved the equation to find C, or the length of the hypotenuse, I got an approximate answer of 380.79 centimeters. Okay, now, since you're submitting your work, you don't have to go step by step and explain how you use the formula, as long as you show your work and you submit your work with your test submission. So the last thing I want to do is explain why ladder B is the best choice. Since the hypotenuse is over 380 centimeters, she needs a ladder that is at least the length of the hypotenuse. Option A is a ladder that would not be long enough to reach the windows, since it is only 365 centimeters in length. Option B is more expensive, but it gives her enough room to do a thorough cleaning job. Okay, so this would be an example. If I included this paragraph and I included all the work, the calculations to show how I got C, and I showed my work of which ladder I chose and why, I would be able to score a 30 out of 30 on the apply section of my test. Let your Math 8 teacher know if you have any questions, or you can refer back to this example if you're looking for an example on how to write a paragraph or how to write a discussion board post, and make sure that it's thorough enough and that you've justified your thinking with both mathematical and written explanations. Good luck.